It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News in your morning time. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there. Brand new guest on the program, at least for this digital side. Nathan, buddy, let's just jump straight into his. How you doing out there, man? How you doing on your end of the state there, buddy? The loving the beard stuff's looking good, man. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Better than I have in a long time.
Hey, for those that most of the Real News audience, you need no introduction for a lot of you. Were back in AMF and days. You were on the radio with us quite a bit then, man. But for those that may not know you, especially from some of my Middle Tennessee folks out here, let them know a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, some of the things you've had published, what you're interested in, all that stuff. You know.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm mostly known as economics. I've worked in and out of politics for 5 or 6 years. My economic policy editorials have been published by some of the largest think tanks around the world, places like the Mises Institute, the Foundation for Economic Education, Zero Hedge, and Business Insider, and in 4 languages: Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese.
Man, you know you're cool when your stuff gets translated into Italian, I think. I mean, that's pretty dang cool. I mean, nothing of mine has ever been translated into Italian, so that's pretty cool. And I also want to mention, too, Nathan is one of the best activists we got over here in the Knoxville area. A great leader, puts on great events at the office all the time, Thinking Together, which we're going to bring back in June. But thank you so much for being with us today, Nathan.
Yeah, man, it is cool to have something translated into a different language. I mean, the best I think I could ever hope for is have something translated into English by sending it over to my sister to remove my terrible grammar from. So it's the best I've ever done, bro. Can you read this email for me, sister? Yes, you're a moron. Here it is. Anyways, greatest honesty in the nation appreciation segment. Everybody in the chat room right now, let us know how you doing, what you're thankful for, praise, prayer, concerns, encouragement, any of that kind of stuff. Anything you need help with, businesses out there that you're seeing are innovating. That's part of the reason why we do a small business segment from time to time on here. We have a very interesting segment right now with our buddy Nathan. Nathan, as you just said, as you just heard, part of his interest in economics, but he also has a bit a close sort of call, if you want to say that, close experience. It really, the coronavirus actually hit home in a very literal sense, man. Quickly, if we could get into that, I don't want to push you too much on this here, buddy, but let us know about your experience with the coronavirus that's been going on, everywhere.
Yeah, certainly. It did hit close to home. In fact, literally inside of my home, my mother tested positive. Fortunately, she had a very, very mild case of coronavirus. I would describe it as a cold, essentially, and it only lasted a week or two, at least, with symptoms. And she's free to go about town now, so we got fortunate.
Now, did anybody else in the family have any symptoms as well? Because I know the doctor ended up telling you, like, look, the proximity you guys are living within each other. Your mother tested positive. You guys all have it too, right?
Yeah, I think probably my stepfather. He's gone most of the time, so he may have avoided it. But myself, I during that same time period, I had a bit of a scratchy throat, kind of like when you have a cold that you're trying to fight off. It's not really there yet. That's how I felt. But I was asymptomatic otherwise.
How long ago was this? Was her positive test? I mean.
A month ago, probably.
Oh goodness. What did they give her any kind of indication as to what she's supposed to do? I mean, from what you hear, let me ask it this way: what you hear in the news after a positive test, they tell you like go home, nurse the symptoms. If it gets worse, call us back, and if it gets even worse than that, show up to the ER or the hospital type thing. Was that the scenario they played out with her as well?
Well, the only reason she had a doctor's appointment for I think some pre-existing condition, and they just as a precaution were testing everybody. And that's how she found out. And they just called her and told her, and just like stay inside.
And obviously, she's doing all right now. Then, as you said before, right?
Yeah, she's totally fine. In fact, she would have just assumed she had a cold had she not taken the test.
Mm. Man, I appreciate you telling us that, dude. And I appreciate because David and I were actually talking yesterday that like I haven't come across anyone yet personally that's actually had it or known anybody that's known anyone. I don't even have 2 or 3 degrees separation from this yet, right? This is the first time I've had a conversation with someone who's actually known somebody else personally, let alone I've actually known someone personally, like you just said, who's been able to say like, yeah, I've been around it. My mother tested positive for it. The doctor said we all probably have it as well type thing. So anyways, man, I appreciate you coming on. Let us know about that. I don't want to push you too much further on that, unless you want to say anything else in the back in there. It's just, the numbers we have in Tennessee, it's just, Shine and I were actually talking yesterday. It's not hitting home for a lot of people. So I don't think a lot of people are, only experience they get through is through the media. You get what I'm saying?
Well, and I want to point out too, you can see it on the scroll on the bottom of your screen. I keep the Knox County stats. I probably should do the whole Tennessee stats, but I think the Knox County ones show you, I think most of our listeners from Knox County, there's only been 5 deaths and like 265 hospitalizations over the course of this time. So it's pretty, by the numbers, it makes a lot of sense that Nathan is the first person I've met who probably had it. And not only that, Nathan, you're the first person in 2 degrees of separation that I've known of. I haven't even known anybody who's had it. And I think that's kind of encouraging. That definitely means if you have a loved one who is high risk in that high risk category, they're very unlikely to get it. I mean, look, nobody has it, or at least not very many people have had it. And it's very encouraging to hear that, you didn't have any symptoms. Your mom didn't seem to have a very bad cold, but you did. I don't know if you mentioned it already because I've been typing in the chat and stuff, but did you mention, you told me earlier that you know some people who actually had a rough experience with coronavirus?
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit? What you know, anyway.
Yeah, certainly. I at the very beginning of this, in fact, the first week after the lockdown really began, I'm a student at the University of Tennessee, and we had some group work which we needed to do, and a good friend of mine and a member of my group who lives in Nashville, his whole family was actually diagnosed with the coronavirus right when this first started. Impacting our community, and he has a pretty large family, several siblings. All of them had it, and they all had, I think, the entire array of severity that we've seen so far, from no symptoms at all to his father had it the most severe case. He was actually in the ICU for like a month. He lost like 25 pounds, very severe for him. Fortunately, my friend, who's also named Nathan, his only symptom really was quite interesting, actually. He actually lost his senses of taste and smell.
I've heard that. Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. So it is something to take seriously. I mean, people are legitimately dying, but the point you all made earlier, at least where we live, it's not impacted our community much. There's not many carriers here, haven't been, and we live in a place with quite a bit of urban sprawl. There's not a lot of close mass social contact anyway, and I think that's one of the big errors we've seen with the way governments have handled this. The same rules which may be effective and justified in a place with a dense population like New York City, it's nonsensical in a place like Jefferson County, for instance.
Dude, That is, I mean, the absolute truth. What you just said. That is the message. I feel like the Real News has been harping since the very beginning, and it's interesting. It's not just applicable to the way that a coronavirus situation is handled. I think it's applicable to almost everything in this crisis time period, to economic situations. I mean, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what you posit there. This one size sort of fits all type solution to everything. And I know that's an old adage, but adages are what they are for a reason. They tend to work before because there's been, the historicity behind them is there. What you're just saying, man, is like, look, what's going to work in Knoxville is probably not going to work for Cookeville. What's going to work in Nashville is probably not going to work for Knoxville. For so many different variables, all of which should make sense objectively on their face. And then you can get a subjective components if you want to, man. It doesn't matter. But that actually pulls us, interestingly enough, into this next topic, at least keeping a little bit more local. Eric said on Facebook a second ago, one person he goes to church with tested positive. One dentist that's someone he goes to church with, he knows, tested positive. So not a lot of people know him personally. But nevertheless, it does seem like Mayor Cooper out here in the Middle Tennessee area, he's saying that he's going to keep essential businesses closed at least for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 14 days, he's saying, and possibly all the way into June. Now, I say for the foreseeable future, this is in direct contradiction to Governor Lee's recent executive order, which as of today should reopen not every business in the state, I would say, but a lot of the usual businesses that are service-based industries, salons, bowling alleys, I don't know, your more intimate type things. I'm not sure what this means for movie theaters. Look in the show notes there at the top of the description section. You'll see a link directly to the Governor Lee recreation guidelines for Tennessee reopening businesses on Friday. Conversely, here in Nashville area, Mayor Cooper was saying it's beyond awful, terrible, crazy that you would even have to contemplate doing something like this unless it was absolutely necessary. He's saying, I don't want us to be paralyzed for years because we didn't do the necessary hard things now. He went on to say, we've seen more deaths in the last months than we did in the entire Vietnam War. He says he's seen models showing hundreds of thousands of deaths. He says he's seen models that even show more unless we continue social distancing.
I really hate when politicians are like, I've seen things. I've seen things. Well, then make them public, you weirdo. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't believe people when they say I've seen things. It's like, I mean, I know there's models out there, and it's very dangerous. More people have died than Vietnam, but I really believe, Mr. Henry, and tell me if I'm wrong. I really feel like all the compliance that people have had is not because they're afraid; it's because they wanted to do something to help. And as that seems to slip away a little bit, where there seems to be a bigger danger in a lot of people's heads because they don't know a lot of people who have it. I don't really think it's relevant what the government thinks about shutting down. I think the most relevant thing is what makes people comfortable to do business. Because in the end, I think this is one of those times where the government isn't going to be allowing the free market to solve the problem. The government's irrelevant. The free market will solve the problem because people aren't following government rules. I mean, we talked about that article on Monday of Apple data saying that people aren't social distancing anymore.
Yeah. Across the country, red state, blue state, doesn't matter. Yeah.
So, like, what the most important thing is not some rule that governments come up with to keep people safe. I'm glad they're doing that. We need smart people thinking about how to do things safely and whatever. But what's most important is how it all balances out, where they feel comfortable to spend money, they feel comfortable to get out of the house and go somewhere. And I really believe that in that space, government's kind of irrelevant. Just going off the data that they're not even social distancing. If they're not social distancing now, are they going to follow all the rules about what to do at a bar, a restaurant, or movie theater?
Government being irrelevant, you mean in how effective those implementations of a possible solution?
Well, if they can't arrest people, right? If they can't arrest people because they're either restrained by their state government, or you just can't arrest everybody. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You're either constrained by practicality or law.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I wanted to bring this up because we have this guy who's kind of an economic thinker on with us. And I really believe the most relevant thing is what the free market will come up with. And it's not one of these things where we're going to free the free market. The free market's going to do what it's doing, regardless of what government. This is bigger than most things. I mean, there's a lot of things the federal government can say, okay, we're going to restrain the free market here. And they do a decent job at it, trying to control it or whatever. They can't control this. And we're seeing more evidence of that every day.
Yeah, I think the thing people are forgetting is before the government ever took action about this, businesses were taking action, and many of them were shutting down of their own accord or modifying the way they do business. Long before, weeks before any sort of official government shutdown was occurring, and I think it goes back to this sort of idea we were talking about a moment ago, where government decisions are too centralized to make sense for all the places that they have effect. Not only is it like, okay, well, the same policy for New York won't work for Jefferson County. Well, I don't think that's true on a business to business level on the same community. I think we need to allow the market and entrepreneurs to have the flexibility to find out what's right for their own business and their own situation, because it's all very, very different. And I think that would also give them the ability to find innovative solutions which allow for the most amount of productivity with the most amount of safety, which the amount of safety at least that they deem necessary for the business.
Let me say this too. Ray said in Facebook a second ago, the logical gap here is saying that the virus is at its beginning, then saying this is a new virus. Did y'all see the virus first come here, or are you just stating what someone else is saying it, who was stating what someone else is saying about it, I think?
I think what he was saying is, how do you know that it was new when we found out it was new?
No, I hear you.
It could have been going on since June of last year, supposedly, or something like that. Or some people, anecdotally think, maybe it hit America a couple months before we thought it did. And that's why there's pockets of places in the country where there's low infection rate, because maybe antibodies have already started propagating throughout the population there.
And we've seen how quickly some of this data can change as we're getting more testing done, and as this is a brand new thing for literally everybody from every different landscape out there, regardless of how you think about this. As you're seeing up on the screen right now, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring Nathan on the program today is in response to what Ray just said, to try and lend some, try and, I don't know, personalize this a little bit for our community that we're building here. That's why we brought Nathan in. He's been a part of this community for a very, very long time. He's been an incredible friend to both David and myself. And I think a part of the community that a lot of people know out here too is that the amount of trust that someone has for myself, or David, or Nathan, or any of these folks could hopefully lend some of that personalized, tinge to what we're talking about. If we know someone that's been through it, and now that we're looking at a situation like here in Nashville, man, I mean, the economic factors here, you would have to say, and I'm trying to parse my words properly here, because I don't want to improperly put Mayor Cooper in a situation that he's not meaning to, but you would have to say that some of this property tax increase, he's having to keep the rhetoric maintained. You get what I'm saying, y'all? Like, he's having to maintain this idea that this is a detrimental thing, that if we reopen too quickly, especially in the middle of Nashville, especially in Nashville, where it's a complete service-driven economy, and we have the densification like we don't necessarily have, say, in Knoxville, or maybe, possibly even in Memphis, he has to keep that narrative going a little bit here to say, like, look, by the way, we also have this property tax coming up here, okay? So I get it. I'm not reopening the economy over here, and that's going to seriously hurt our revenue, but I am upping property taxes by 32%. We're still voting on that, by the way. Because in that same article I linked just above, one of the other questions in that interview, he goes on to say, Cooper hopes that he can see businesses back to normal. But again, keep in mind, this article writes, before next February, he thinks he can wants to see businesses open back up again. But they're also still considering a 32% property tax increase. That's where he says it's the only way we're able to afford police. You get what I'm saying? When Cooper says it's the only way we're able to afford police, he's directly tying, say, safety or enforcement measures or some type of mechanism or
he's
implementation.
Saying you can't do business unless we raise taxes. That's what
That's a little bit what I'm saying.
That's
yes,
what he's
exactly.
saying.
And you can't necessarily.
It doesn't matter if we open up the economy. If Nashville city government can't run, you'll have anarchy in the streets because we don't have police.
He says 1,000 other cities are saying they can't afford the police. This is the only way we can hope to afford police, is with this property tax increase, obviously, to get the revenues needed to keep that portion of city government going. And to me, Nathan, let me kick it to you. As far as that assessment is concerned, it's just like, I don't know, man, that to me seems disingenuous at best, or at least slightly disingenuous at best, because it's like, dude, come on, bro. We all know the very first thing that you consider cutting any city budget is not law enforcement. I'll put it this way. Let me put it positive. The last thing you consider cutting in a city budget is your law enforcement. So why are you throwing that out there as like the first bargaining chip? It doesn't make sense. Go ahead, though, Nathan.
I think that's precisely how most politicians speak, isn't it? He's right in line with everything else that his colleagues say. It's fear mongering, it's salacious, and it's objectively not true. It's inconsistent with his own goals. So, as you said, I mean, you wouldn't cut law enforcement first, and I don't think that a tax increase will actually increase revenue in this case. I mean, this is a 32% increase from the current levels. So there's something in economics called the Laffer curve, and it's popularized by Reagan's economist Art Laffer, and it's the idea. Well, if you have a 0% tax rate, you're going to have zero revenue. But if you have a 100% tax rate, you're also going to have 0% revenue because nobody's going to do anything.
Yeah, that's true, right?
There's got to be a
or they're
curve
not
in
going to
here,
pay it,
right?
right? Or they're not going to pay it, or they'll move or something, right?
Exactly. So there's got to be a curve between these 2 points where revenue is maximized, right? And I fear, and I'm sure that significant increase, especially under these conditions, is going to actually have a negative impact on revenue because of the negative impact it would have on business. So I think he's looking towards the future. I think he's capitalizing on a crisis to further his own policy goals in the future.
Well, I
think it's nasty.
People are starting to feel the squeeze, though, and it goes back a little bit to what David was just mentioning a second ago here. That they're starting to feel the squeeze in the sense of we have new job numbers that came out this morning. What is that? I think like 8 a.m. Eastern. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. Nevertheless, these are the new job numbers that we're looking at right now, and this is a little bit of what David's talking about when he's bringing up articles of earlier this week, late last week, where Apple data is now showing that, like, look, it doesn't matter what the government is saying. This type of information is just going to force people out of their homes. This type of information, if you're not somehow, I don't know, man, socializing the solution, i.e. just pumping trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars, which we are doing, back into the spender's hands, in the type of economy we have, the desperation is going to set in. And in that desperation, certain people who don't qualify for PPP, or maybe are not seeing the $1,200 stimulus check come in, or maybe that $1,200 stimulus check immediately went to some other obligation that they have. Maybe it's not, I don't know, man, fill in the blank of whatever the reason is. It's just right now, it's just not really working for people. And I say this, we have not only anecdotal evidence, but it's starting to mount more. Look at the Dallas situation yesterday. That salon owner essentially said, like, I got kids to feed here, and all my folks have kids to feed. Now, you said that we're not essential. These numbers right here that jumped up this morning, they're saying record 20.5 million jobs were lost in April. Unemployment rises to 14.7%. You're seeing the same information on your screen there. The real unemployment rate, which includes workers not looking for jobs, is apparently in the underemployed surge to 22.8%. Now, again, I'm not an economics guy. I don't know the grand scheme, the perspective of what that looks like historically. I will say I have two other stories pulled up here that are kind of saying like it's not as bad necessarily as it seems. Now, both of these economic experts are tying some type of potential recovery to how quickly America can, say, create and implement a vaccine. It's a totally different conversation. But this is at least what they're saying. First one that I have here is coming from a guy. He's the professor of finance at the School of Business at Duke University. Now, apparently this guy, last summer, when the U.S. just notched a decade of economic recovery and unemployment stood at 3.7%. So we're doing pretty well just a while ago. He predicted recession coming for 2020 or early 2021. And this economic expert, so they say, has a perfect record for calling recessions and is betting, here's the headline from MarketWatch, he's betting that this particular recession will be over by the end of 2020. Right? So you got to juxtapose these two headlines here. The one that we're looking at right now from the massive job numbers lost that is going to squeeze people that that Mayor Cooper is going to have to react to, that individual is going to have to react to. And hopefully, man, some silver lining from this economic expert. Let me tell this to you, Nathan, what he's considering here. He's saying, how did he predict this a couple months back before coronavirus hit? He said, well, because the yield, this is language that I don't pretend to understand here, Nathan, but he says the yield on the 3-month Treasury bill was higher than the yield on the 5-year Treasury note for the entire second quarter of 2019. That, quote, inverted yield curve had been the harbinger of the previous seven recessions. Now, Harvey first identified this inverted yield curve's predictive power in 1986, his doctoral dissertation at the University of Chicago. And what he's saying now is he's sort of seeing a reverse in that trend. Quote, he's saying the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, we could never tell when it was going to end. He said, this time, the cause is clear. This is a really important quote as far as it making sense to me. The cause is clear this time. It's a biological event. And the solution is also clear. Another biological event. Going on to say he doesn't anticipate a V-shaped recovery that Wall Street touted a few weeks ago. He says, I think it looks more like a skinny U because he doesn't believe that we'll have a vaccine in the first quarter of 2021. But I don't know, man. Nathan, be interested to get your opinion on that. Terrible job numbers we're looking on the one hand. Economic expert says, give it till the end of the year. We might be all right, though. What do you think?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So I guess I'll start with the yield curve. So why the yield curve is important. So you touched on it there. So basically what happens in an inverted yield curve. So you would expect the amount of return an investor would reasonably expect on, say, an investment he can hold for 2 years will be lower than the return he requires for an investment he has to hold for 30 years, for example, because there's just so much more risk over that greater period of time. For one reason. So when we see that situation switch, it means that investors are expecting a particularly difficult period of returns in the near future. At least that's sort of the neoclassical model. I have different ideas of maybe about how monetary policy influences that. So that's a little bit more complicated. But that is based, all of the bond yields are based off of what investors expect to happen in the future. This was happening, the yield curve inverted in the fall of last year. And coronavirus wasn't on anybody's radar, no matter who you were then. So whatever was causing the yield inversion then is different than the coronavirus. I think we need to deal with that because I think probably that was something to do with the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. But I don't think this was the recession, which may or may not have been indicated by that. I don't think this unemployment we're seeing here is being caused by a structural problem in our economy, like 2008 was, like all of the boom and bust cycles we've had for the past 100 years. It wasn't this. It was the government ordered businesses to shut down by law. That's something entirely different. Do I think there will be a V-shaped recovery? Let's say all of government restrictions were lifted tomorrow. I don't think we regain it as quickly as we lost it. There have been businesses that have gone under, small businesses that have gone under, and you'll have to find investors to replace them. I think there is structural damage that has happened to the economy, which will slow this down. And I think individual employees will have different schedules of their own to get back to work, because some people have different fear levels for this virus than others. And I really want to address lastly here this whole notion of essential worker. Well, who's it essential to? I think that's a weird perspective we haven't discussed yet, right? I think every job is essential to the person who has it and to the people who depend on the income from that job. So I think it's elitist and ignorant for some bureaucrat, some mid-level bureaucrat who came up with this term to decide who has an essential job and who doesn't, who gets to provide for their family and who doesn't. I think it's perverse.
Sean, I saw you want to jump in there too.
Oh yeah, I wanted to throw out to Nathan, since we're kind of talking some economics here, I wanted to throw out some kind of novel variables that are not a part of the economic scene in a normal circumstance, because of, like you said, this novel circumstance where the economy was shut down by force of law, not by some almost like a natural disaster, like if the whole country was hit by a hurricane or something like that. But this is even kind of weirder than that, because even in a hurricane, people would have started cleaning up right away and trying to figure out things. But I want to talk about some variables and then see what you think about how that may affect the recovery. I really do feel like, at least with a sizable portion of Americans, there's almost a feeling of duty because of the numbers we're seeing and this feeling that everyone seems to have that hasn't ebbed with the I'm not going to follow the government's rules, I'm going to get out of my house. It's still pretty powerful. I think everyone still feels like I want to do my part to help in this crisis. And I think for a lot of people that's turning into I need to go out there and produce value so we can get this economy back on track. And I think that's not a normal circumstance and one that could create exponential value in a short period of time. And I don't know. I feel like that's a thing in the ethos. And I know that's a really difficult thing to measure, but I do feel like some people, I don't know how to say it, feel like a patriotic duty to get out there and not go make money, not spend money, not just making money and spending money, but creating value, creating spaces for people, maybe starting a business so they can hire people and create value for those families who don't have jobs right now and stuff like that. People maybe be more willing to take risk for that reason, for like maybe a national duty or community duty. But I don't know. I'm just saying, have you seen that in articles and Facebook posts and stuff like that? And do you think that could have a positive impact on the recovery?
Yeah, certainly. I think there are huge. There's a huge desire to, we've lost a lot of value in our lives because the market was providing and now it can't. So there's a massive desire to get that back. And the longer traditional ways are not available to us, the more we'll look to ways like that.
And I hear what you're saying, Sean. Like, it is going to take a almost sense of charity, right? Like in the same sense that you have charitable giving from religious foundations, nonprofit organizations, a Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. But in that same sense, it is sort of an American ideal, an American spirit to help out your fellow man, either by giving or, like you just said, man, like some of that giving might be taking more risk. Right?
Yeah, well, there's that. But I'm saying there's kind of a meme out there about people like reinventing themselves during the shutdown. Like, there's been a meme out there in the world like, hey, you got some free time. Learn a skill. Become more valuable than you learned before. If your job just went away, Skillshare was almost giving away their service for a while. People were, you get what I'm saying? Like, there's a meme out there about reinventing yourself. I mean, look at us. I didn't know how to make this TV show happen before. I mean, literally did not know how to make this TV show happen before the coronavirus. Now, am I going to go make $1 million off this and hire a bunch of employees? No. But Grant's like, maybe. Let's go with maybe, just so Grant can be happy about it. But but you get what I'm saying. I had that drive to be more valuable and here's the other thing, not just to be more valuable in a charitable sense, Mr. Henry, but I wanted to ask Nathan, another novel circumstance is this ultra, what would you call it? Entrepreneurship, creativity to meet the current market needs. And everyone's really hypersensitive to, I'll use a term that me and Nathan like to throw around a lot, to this chaos. And then adjusting to it and making order out of it so they can keep their employees, keep their income, or even that sense of duty I talked about where you feel that greater macro pull to be, so your community's creating value, being a part of the community creating value, and how that all plays into it. And I know this is a little bit Pollyanna sounding, but I actually meet and talk to people who, this is not coming from me. I hear this from other people. And I think it gives me hope, maybe. It's a little hopeful. But I just wanted to see what you thought about something like that as well.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the person, right? I think some people are taking the situation to learn new skills, better themselves, whether it be physically or intellectually. And some people aren't. And that really, I think crises reveal heroes. It doesn't make them. So if you went into this with that sort of mindset, you were already that kind of person. It gave you an opportunity to improve yourself. But I think if you went into this crisis, not in the right place mentally, I think it just exaggerated that. It revealed. it removed, the societal structures which make us behave in a lot of ways.
Yeah, man.
And it revealed who we were naturally in a lot of cases. So
yeah. Dude, lending to what both of y'all saying there, man, I don't even know who to attribute the quote to. I just know I can't attribute it to myself because I heard somebody else say it. But nonetheless, it does seem that a species is never more prone to evolve than when it's on the brink of extinction, right? And that's a little bit of where we are. And I don't mean literally. I don't mean in a literal sense. I mean in the way that this narrative has been constructed through the media coverage of it. Everybody is losing their minds right now. All right. And because they are, I'm not even trying to pretend that it's a healthy thing the media is doing. I'm just saying the way that our species tends to react to something like that is by evolving, by progression, by burning off things of the past, by trying to become better than they were the day before, because now we're forced to do so because we have no other option but to do so. And honestly, man, I do think that some small part of that, maybe even in spite of the intentions of the media, maybe even in spite of the intentions of whoever the powers there be, I think some small part of the silver lining behind that, bro, is that like, there's this odd sense of coalescence. There's this odd sense of bipartisan support behind like, dude, maybe we don't need like a bunch of government restrictions, right? Like I'm in this phase right now, dude, where I'm like the tiger trying to box my way out of this. I'm trying to move. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to reshape. I'm trying to get some stuff done. And the more y'all keep getting involved in my lives from this top-down approach and not letting me figure it out for me figure it out for my neighbor, my community figure it out for my community, and branch out from there as grassroots should, the more y'all keep getting involved, the more you keep stalling me out with this, man. And I feel that sense taking over, and I feel like it's a thing we're all believing in. Go ahead, y'all.
I just wanted to say that's what I was going to get to next, is I feel like maybe not everybody's feeling those things that I just said, that wanting to better yourself or the wanting to get out there and create value for yourself and your neighbors. But I think a sizable portion of people are. But I do believe that it's fragile and it could be broken by things like my property taxes just went up 32%.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's
right.
A fragile, unique, novel thing for a sizable amount of people to want to produce, 20, 30, 50% more value than they were producing in January. I mean, and I know people who own businesses who've told me they're working harder now than they've ever worked in their life to either maintain or to build up a stock for the future, to get ahead, however you want to say it. It's very intangible. It's very hard to put your finger on this thing that I'm talking about. But whatever it is, it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's the engine of the free market. It's the engine of America. The ingenuity, the desire to produce value, the desire to build a better future for you and your family and your community. But I feel like it could be broken. It could be smashed or disincentivized or even ebb over time to where it's not as valuable, this feeling in an individual, by things like restrictions and barriers from these busybody do-gooder bureaucrats. Because really, I mean, what's more important? Like getting these businesses going and people paying for groceries and rent and things, is that more important than certain city services? I believe so. Because when it comes right down to it, even if they have to cut the services or cut the jobs, if there's stuff to do out in the market, it doesn't matter if they cut the jobs. They can go get new jobs. But if you create this economy where the best job, if we go back to the model where the best job is a government job, we're screwed.
Yeah,
if
dude.
People need to think of the best thing you could do is go out and start a business, or the best thing you could do is attach yourself to a principled entrepreneur with a lot of energy and see how you can help them produce value. Maybe you're in that space. But if we create this world where the only safe job is a municipal, stamper, a government stamper, you bring in and say, here's my form, and if that's the most secure job, if that's the job everybody wants, we're screwed.
Nathan, you want to respond there by chance? I saw you kind of leaning forward. I didn't know. No.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, when you go on, people are facing a new journey, right? Like they're on their whole world has changed, and that's a very scary thing. And we don't need politicians like Jim Cooper adding one more dragon into their world. They don't need that. and it could break people. It could break their will.
Man, and in somewhere in your life too, you have to be able to, I don't know, man, add a little humor, add some sense of levity, add something that's just gonna add some sense of positivity to your life. I say that because if you check the show notes, by the way, one quick plug for the show notes at the top of this description of this video that you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube or wherever you're watching. Sean does a great job of dropping these in every single day. That Evernote link will go to a much better formatted version of the show notes that you actually see in the description of the video there. At some point, you also see, by the way, too, let me just plug this one more time, a petition that we're doing for the organization that David and I work for. We're trying to make it so that the federal government does not bail out the states. Quick plug for that there, and then I'll get back to the topic at hand. We have a new one going out there that signs a letter directly to the legislators, some targeted legislators that we've been going after on that particular issue. We don't need another bailout for the states, man. We went through this whole thing the night before. It doesn't matter. Anyways, back to the show notes. So you'll see stuff that's relevant, and then out of nowhere, you'll see this story about a Kim Jong Un impersonator, and it's part of what we're talking about today. You have to be able to, as much as you can, just squeeze in there, even if it doesn't make sense contextually, squeeze in there some humor in your life, something to make you laugh, something positive. There is actual science behind the idea of just forcing yourself to smile, releasing particular chemicals that may not have been released before. It's a real thing, man. I'm telling you. That story in particular.
I wish I could have been his body double. You know, I feel like I could have done it.
I know, right?
I mean, I look just like him, you know?
This story made me chuckle for two different reasons, but here's the headline. I'll pull it up in the New York Post here in just a minute. Kim Jong Un impersonator says dictator is too fat to find a body double in North Korea, right? So it's like two reasons I love that story. One, because it's just making fun of Kim Jong Un's weight. And two, because nobody else apparently has enough food to go around in North Korea to attain that level anywhere, right? It's
we're not shaming fat people. We're saying there are no fat people in
a dictatorship.
No, not a dictatorship. There's plenty of dictatorships in the world. No. This is the worst communist, disgusting rat hole on the country. There's like 37 dictatorships or something like that, or 40 or something like that. There's a lot of dictatorships in the world. This one is where they take notes from. There's no fat people. The best job is a coal miner job where you die at like 32 or something like that, or 17, who knows? And but that's a hilarious story that it's one of those things where you either laugh or you cry, right?
No, I know.
That there's no fat people in North Korea. That is very sad. But it's also at the same time a way of making fun of a dictator, which is a pastime that all Americans should enjoy. I make fun of the royal family in England all the time. Oh, wait, they're not dictators. Oh, right.
The beautiful absurdity of the entire thing, man. This person goes on to say a famous, the article you're seeing on your screen now, a famous Kim Jong Un impersonator said there's no way the North Korean leader could find a convincing lookalike in the food-starved nation because he's too obese. Obviously, what he's talking about is there's been speculation that Kim Jong Un has a body double out there somewhere because you just haven't seen him for a little while, and then he resurfaces. This guy goes on to say he's not just chubby, he's really fat. We're going to find a fat person in North Korea. He said, you're not going to find one. Going on to say, to feed them both, that bill would be through the roof. And it's also a little bit of the state of where media is right now, too. That a publication like the New York Post is now saying, like, look, man, I'm losing my mind a little bit. I'm having to get my mind off of other things by just focusing on a story like this. Like maybe the idea that there's not a body double out there is a plausible one because you can't find some of the size of Kim Jong Un. And also, like you just said, Sean, too, does paint something, the idea of like, dude, these dictatorships, how horrible they are, the amount of starvation that's going on. Let's shine a light on that, and a little bit. Humor, satire in particular, can be a very, very clearly pointed weapon. Can be a very sharp tool, almost as a surgeon would use it to cut out a piece of commentary that someone needs to focus on. Quickly rolling into the next story here, because I wanted to give us at least 15 minutes to devote this, and possibly something toward the end of the show here, talking about World 1.0 versus World 2.0, pre-corona, post-corona. We've all heard this story so far. Headline coming from AP as far as the publication I pulled it from. Dun, 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 dun. Give me one of those real quick, Shine. The dun, 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 dun you love to do so much.
Dun, dun, dun. You mean
Yeah,
like
there you go.
the NFL?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun,
Justice
dun, dun, dun,
Department,
dun, dun.
the
That's what you mean,
DOJ,
like Looney Tunes.
dropping charges against old Michael Flynn. I'm sure you guys have both heard about this. For those that are not
Oh man, what a beautiful day yesterday. I kind of wanted to go live with you in the afternoon when I heard about it, because it's not just the Justice Department dropping the case. There's so much more than that. I mean, they're releasing documents of the closed door hearings with Adam Schiff. Those in the beginning days. The quotes from Bill Barr saying, "I wanted to make sure people knew there were not two standards for justice." that of saying that's why he did it. There's so much great context in this story, and I probably just hit all the high points. I probably shouldn't have done that, but everything about it was super exciting. It was really cool. It was a cool day because I was a big Flynn fan before all that happened. And I don't know, like one of the first big time Democrats speak at a Republican national convention. It was like, I don't know, it was pretty interesting. And then like, and he seemed like a pretty talented, smart guy. And then out of nowhere, we lost that talent because of what seemed like at the time, I don't know, I'll just be honest, BS. And here we are. It's been confirmed that we were right, that it was BS back in 2017 when we were talking about this on Real News.
Yeah, man. Erickson, Facebook, by the way, I'm sure North Korea could recruit from someone from South Korea. And on this is interesting how these comments on Facebook work, man, because I'm pretty sure Norm made this comment about the last story that we covered, but it actually fits oddly well with this story with Flynn. He said, the blood-sucking organism we know as government is the problem. They have seemed to forget that, quote, of the people, for the people, and by the people, hashtag shrink the feds. Now, think about it in this sense, too, man. I could also say, like, shrink the fourth branch of government, i.e. the unaccountable regulation side of this stuff, i.e. any of those departments or agencies that we know as well. The idea that I think that Norm is imparting here a little bit, man, is like we all have a severe lack of trust in the institutions of this country. And that emanates from everywhere, and it streams into media coverage and a bunch of other stuff, too. For those that are not caught up on the story that we're talking about with this Flynn thing, we don't in 12 minutes here, we don't have enough time to go back into the entirety of what this comes from. Let me just catch you up with where we are here. Now, they're saying, by there, I mean the AP. AP is saying this is an abrupt about face. I don't think it is. Whatever. We'll call it an about face from the Justice Department saying that they're dropping criminal charges against President Donald Trump's first national security advisor for like 5 minutes, Michael Flynn, abandoning the prosecution that became a rallying cry for the president and his supporters in attacking the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation. Now, in court documents filed Thursday, the Justice Department said that after reviewing newly disclosed information and other materials, it agreed with Flynn's lawyers that his interview with the FBI should never have taken place in the first place because his contacts with the Russian ambassador were, quote, entirely appropriate. That was the main talking point from Trump from day one and from a lot of Republican commentators as well. They were saying this guy is the interim national security advisor. Everything he is doing, he is supposed to be doing. I mean, literally what you're asking this guy to be interviewed for is his actual job description. His job description is to go meet with other world leaders. And you're asking him, why is he going to meet with other world leaders? Because that's his job, dude. What are you talking about?
I guarantee you, if he'd hired McMaster first and McMaster had been calling Russia, nobody would have said anything about it. Because did McMaster end up ultimately getting that job eventually as DNI?
I think how long that succession of that was, but I hear what you're saying, yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure he became DNI. I'm pretty sure he did. But you get what I'm saying, where if it had been someone that either the media liked or the Republican elites had liked, or the Democrat elites had liked, nothing would have happened to him. At least that's my opinion. I don't know if that's really true.
It's not just your opinion, dude.
But I think
you're dead on right.
And here's my deal for that. I think the main reason he got really messed up is he made the Obama administration look bad as it was winding down. And then he worked for the Obama administration, by the way. Any Democrats watching, he was your DNI. Director of National Intelligence. He was Obama's Director of National Intelligence. The problem was he was letting Americans know that he was being ordered to kill Americans with drones. I think that was him who got that out. He also was a part of shutting down the proxy war in Syria and letting Americans know that how he was doing it and what he was doing it through back channels and through people who write books and stuff like that. And that made everyone really upset. Really, really upset. And by everyone, I mean everyone who thinks they matter. Not you, the people. The people who are like the elites who talk about who use the term low income people all the time. Those are the people who were mad at General Flynn. And like I said, if it had been someone specifically, if it had been McMaster, this would have never happened.
No, I know, right? And that was that's actually some of the main commentary that's coming from Real Clear is the one that I saw it on the other day as well. They were saying exactly that same thing, saying maybe the animus towards Flynn had nothing to do with Russia in particular because it just doesn't make sense on its face.
Or Trump.
Republicans, right? It had to do with the fact that, hey, on the way out, Flynn had a bunch of dirt on the Obama administration, and he wasn't exactly quiet about it either. So maybe this was some built-up sort of like, I don't know, retaliation, revenge, something in the vein of that. But
well, obviously he was going to do things, at the very least, he was going to do things differently than the Obama administration wanted to be done. right? Or
Right.
people in that space. He was obviously going to change course. And as we've seen over and over again, especially in foreign policy, you've seen a lot of people say that the guy who was elected by the people to be president shouldn't be making foreign policy decisions, which is weird. And you've constantly heard that this whole time. Like, he shouldn't talk to world leaders. We had an impeachment over him talking to a world leader, right? You know, and they've released transcripts. So, like, especially on foreign policy, you've seen people say that the president doesn't get to decide, and anybody he's put in positions of power that would do things different than Bush or Obama or Clinton has been run through the ringer, and this is the most glaring example. And maybe it won't happen anymore because of what happened yesterday.
Let me finish here by saying the department's, this is again coming from the reporting of AP, saying the department's actions come amid an internal review into the handling of the case and an aggressive effort by Flynn's lawyers to challenge the basis for the prosecution. The lawyers cited newly disclosed FBI emails and notes last week to allege that Flynn was improperly trapped into lying when agents interviewed him days after Trump's inauguration. All right. Now, I wanted to go to Nathan here to get his response. What I started this whole train with, right? We read a comment from who was this in Facebook a second ago? Norm said, yeah, of the people, for the people, and by the people, hashtag shrink the feds. Honestly, sort of alluding to this idea of the lack of trust in government. And Attorney General Barr, he was actually asked in an interview on CBS. I have this linked in the show notes as well. He was asked, are you just shilling for Trump here? Right? I mean, what's it? Come on, dude. Like, what's the purpose for this? You're doing this now? Is this just distract from coronavirus? And one of Barr's response, whether you love him or hate him, I at least appreciated this. He said, I'm trying to instill trust back into these institutions. All right? Like, that's what I'm trying to do. We got something wrong in the past. It didn't make sense. So we're trying to correct that. Nathan, dude, I know that's something that's big with you as well, right? Is what happens to society, our Republican general, if we just don't trust, if there's not voluntary consent to this contractual exchange anymore, man. I don't know if you want to respond to that or anything else we've said.
Well, I think more important than trust in institutions, I think we need institutions that actually work properly. I think that's what we need more than trust in them. The reason people don't trust institutions is they're starting to realize that they don't always work properly. And Flynn case, I think the Roger Stone case as well, are all red flags to a lot of people who are paying attention.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean you and your civil lawsuit are going to be politically targeted? Probably not. But I think it's a wonderful indication that people are still paying attention and people still care, that even when it happens at a level which won't affect them ever, people are like, this is absolutely unacceptable and we need it to change now. So I think are there signs of very severe decay? Yes, but there's also signs of a very strong foundation still.
Barr obviously went on to say that, look, he knows politicization has no bounds, right, in any particular case. And I think Nancy Pelosi actually picked up on that when she was asked her response to this entire ordeal, saying Attorney General Barr's politicization of justice knows no bounds. Dropping the case and continue to cover up for the president is basically the only thing that's going on here. And again, I step back and say, part of my problem, and I'll be completely honest about this, part of my problem of what I think might be going on right now is that, like, dude, elections have consequences a little bit, right? And sometimes when and if Democrats play a game that is hardcore for a very long time, Jordan Peterson says this, okay? There's this sort of like biological component or this inherent desire that humanity has to play fairly. I don't mind losing as long as I lose by the same rules that you're playing by. And I think a little bit of what's starting to happen here, and I'm not saying this is the entirety of this case, I think this might have actually been justified. From the very beginning, this was an unjustified pursuit. Nonetheless, I think a little bit what we might be seeing now, you get where I'm going with this, is that Republicans are now in power. Trump has a bully pulpit like no president has had before him, and he's kind of using it, bro. And he's kind of playing a little bit of the same game the Democrats played in the past of saying, like, look, do you like your own medicine? How's it taste to you type thing, right? How do you like it when I come back and play? How do you like it when someone that you thought was on the hook? When Roger Stone, I don't even know if that guy's ever going to see a day in jail. Who knows? He might, right? But if Roger Stone and all these people are starting to get conversations about getting off, there becomes this conflicting factor of, And yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, but it becomes a conflicting factor of, is this justified to let these people go? Or are you just playing the same game because you can? And if you can play the same game, should we? That's the response I want to get possibly from both y'all or from Facebook here. Should we be playing the same game here just because we can, if that's what's happening?
I'll jump in first. Oh, go ahead, Nathan. You go ahead.
I don't think Trump's playing the same game, though. He's not putting anyone in jail. He's just undoing the things they did and exposing what they did.
You know, that's a really great point, Nathan. That's even better than what I was going to say. I was going to say something like, you know, based on what you said and that research, I think it was from Pinksip, that Jordan Peterson references about the rats and the playing and how that it was a great study. I can't remember his first name, but I'm pretty sure his last name's Pinksip. If the whole society is playing a game, Mr. Henry, when you say should we also play, I don't know if we have a choice in the long run. When the biggest institutions are playing a certain game, you end up playing along either by trying not to play or playing the opposite way or playing along with it. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like even
yes.
trying not to play is playing. I know that's starting to sound existential and philosophical or whatever, but even trying to avoid it is part of playing the game. Being on one side or the other is part of playing the game. And that's what's really sad about the disingenuous game that nobody likes playing, that we've been involved in for 3 years. You know what I'm saying? And to Nathan's point, that's totally fair. Trump is not arresting people like the way that he's not arresting his political opponents. That's true. At least not right now. And trying to undo in very subtle ways. It's not like he went and pardoned everybody. You get what I'm saying? And
yeah, that's true.
And it's fair.
That's true. Yeah.
And he totally could have. And I also think it's kind of, we don't know for sure that Trump had anything to do with this. By the way, it's kind of this is real news, right? We're inserting that where it's a kind of implicit maybe that Trump had something to do with this Flynn non-prosecution thing, but we don't know that. It could have just been Barr. I mean, Barr has shown over and over again that he's kind of had a bad taste in his mouth for a number of reasons this whole investigation, not because of necessarily the merits, but because of what it's doing to the perception of the Justice Department, what it's doing to the perception of the justice system, which I feel like is a nice moral high ground, and it makes sense. I really don't feel like he's virtue signaling. I think he really does care, at least a little bit, is motivated by the fact that people are not caring as much about the opinions of the justice system in general. I mean, why do you think Greg Abbott did what he did in Texas? I mean, I'm sure part of what he did was do a moral thing about this woman, but the other part of it is this woman would not bend the knee to a judge, which he agrees with at this time, not bending the knee to a judge, but in the future, you need people to respect judges' decisions. You need people to do that. So I think part of what even Greg Abbott did yesterday was trying to restore faith in the institution. And I think that's, we're starting to see signals of people saying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, to try to restore faith in these institutions. To me, that means we only have a limited of time to restore faith in those institutions. And the people who are running these institutions better recognize that and start acting right. So people, like Nathan said, make your institutions work so people can trust you, so that more than anything, we know we can do business. We know we can go outside. These are very important things, because if not, we're going to be struggling for generations. You know, we need these things to work. And hopefully, what happened yesterday is putting us on the road to that.
And we need these things to work as we enter a new phase, right? As we enter a new time period of I don't know, maybe it's not paradigm shift stuff, or maybe it is, but this is what I, probably into the show with here, because we're trying to do the best we can to keep this to an hour, right? I don't have much else going on today. If y'all want to go a little bit longer, let me know. But I did want to leave the Real News audience with at least this portion of this article that I've had tagged in the show notes for probably about a month, right? And I've been trying to figure out the best time to get to it. Maybe it's when the news is dying down, or maybe this is sort of an evergreen story, we call it. But I think today in particular, I just wanted to tease this out there at the end of the show, because it seems like the theme has been sort of like, what does the new introduction look like? Trusting in these, in the faith of these institutions, right? Or having faith in these institutions. And what does that look like as we enter a new time period of interacting with other human beings? And dude, like, it's a strange thing for our species at large to interact with other human beings in a way that we haven't really done before. Like there's no coding or conditioning for this. maybe there's conditioning for it because we've been a generation raised on social media, so you have that filter between you, and now you have the actual distance. I don't know, man. Maybe we're better suited for this than I thought we might have been. But this is coming from guy Tyler Cohen. I believe he's part of the Cato Institute, so fairly libertarian leaning type things. If you want to go that route, it doesn't matter. But you can see at the top of the thing here, right? Quote. I'm pretty sure it's a Lenin quote. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But what he's doing basically is comparing World 2.0 versus World 1.0, post and pre-coronavirus. And some of these things that you're seeing, if you're scrolling down, hopefully the Facebook can get a decent image of this as well. Talking World 1.0, World 2.0, 110 successive months of job growth. Now 10 million jobless claims in 2 weeks. And this was as of April 3rd. We know now that number today is all the way up to 20-something million. 10-year bull market as compared to with winners and losers. But some of the stuff here, dude, like it's this juxtaposition of like some of the stuff's terrible and some of the stuff is not so terrible, right? So commute and traffic jams, stuff people hate, as opposed to just home and more family time, right? Last mile, and now it's just the only mile, meaning like in order to commute that you have to go to get the things that are necessary for you, the last mile to your job, now it's just like you have the only mile. Just get your necessities, you're good. Restaurants, grocery stores, $4 toast, a sourdough starter, walk score to speed test. Here's another one that I love. $100,000 for college, not paying $100,000 for a webinar, right? Like,
have you seen that already? There's already people suing the colleges because they're like, I should get a discount. Dang it. Sorry guys. But they're like, there's already people suing colleges. It's on what's that conservative college site? Can't remember what it's called.
Campus Reform, right?
Campus Reform. They wrote the article about it, how students are suing because they're like, I didn't get as good of an education this semester as I did last semester. I didn't get the value. And just anecdotal, my fiance traded a seedling starter of a tomato plant for sourdough starter 3 days ago.
Really?
Yes.
Get out of here, dude. All right.
And by the way, the barter deal is already happening, by the way, where people have kind of more dollars. Some people don't have any dollars, and then some people have more dollars than they have places to put it. And people are trading actual things of value, by the way. That's happening, and I think it's only going to increase. But anyway, please continue. This is so cool.
Dude, that was so awesome to hear. I mean, it literally does. I mean, it lends that sort of anecdotal evidence that we need, puts a face to the story type thing of what we just talked about a second ago. Like, some of this stuff is actually going on more than just in a sense of you thinking about it. It's not hypothetical. Sports, esports, we're seeing that already clearly. Low volatility, high volatility, design logistics, of course. This is an interesting one. Phone is a cigarette as opposed to the phone is now oxygen. All right. But I do think, man, it's just, I'm hoping this ends on a slight high note for some people here, man, because as I've seen sort of this downtrend of the economy and people losing their jobs and us being shut in for the last 2 months, as we're starting to reopen, and I think today is a good day to put this sort of point on it, man. As we're starting to reopen almost all industry, all businesses, salons and bowling alleys and movie theaters and all the like, I think I just hope we don't take for granted what we possibly have learned over the last 2 or 3 months here, man. And that being that, like, yes, we've been shut down, but it's also forced us to get closer to our families. It's forced us to become closer to our friends. It's forced us to reach out to those people that we might not have reached out to before. It's forced, for example, me and my wife taking walks every single day, starting new workout routines, right? It's forced us to be able to deal with this stuff, living in a bit of smaller area out here in the Franklin area. It's forced us to become closer together, right? Through this tragedy and this struggle and this trial, man, we've grown together in this. Because we've grown together in this, in my personal opinion, because we have a centralized thing that her and I are both focusing on, i.e. God for me, whatever it is for you, collective consciousness, community, doesn't matter. But as we're both here, because we're focusing on the same thing in the trial, as we're moving towards that central point, we're inevitably moving closer together, man. That's what I'm saying is I think during this time period, I just don't want us to lose sight. With all the tragedy that's going on, there are things that we should and could be looking at that, like, dude, we got some good stuff, man. And Nathan and I, this is a perfect reason why I'm in the show with this today. Remember, man, I reached out to you like a month and a half ago at the very beginning of all this stuff. Like, we were at the height of like next week is 2 million deaths, right? And I was like, I'm losing my mind a little bit, buddy. And you said, like, I think good things are going to come out of this. Yeah? I'll let you have the last word on that if you want to, Nathan.
Yeah, I think when we've lost the bit of community we had, I think we realized just how valuable it was. And I think when government allows us to, we will come back stronger, more bonded than ever before.
That's what I'm talking about, man. Sean, you can go ahead and get that closing music ready if it's not.
Yeah, I'll get that ready now, man. Just kind of remind everybody who's watching, maybe Real News Radio Live and all the ways they can contact us and stuff, and I'll get the music going.
Yeah, man. By the way, realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live is probably the best way to find all the stuff related to Real News. It's sort of the central hub. It's got our Facebook on there, our YouTube in there, some of the show notes from previous shows on there.
Tell them about the Tumblr, bro. Tell them about the Tumblr.
Tell them about the Tumblr.
Dude, tell them about the Tumblr, bro.
Anytime we go live for anything as well, the very first video you'll see up there is also this live video that's happening right now. We also have a Tumblr for sale, as you can see on your screen right now. Tumblr, 3/4 T, Real News logoing on there. Big shout out to Shine for putting that stuff together. Buy some merch, help out the boys in the Real News program. Also, plug for the petition at the top of the show notes there. Reject bailouts, hashtag reject bailouts. We do not think it's a good idea for the federal government to bail out the states. If you want to know more about that, check our stuff over the last couple of days here. I would also implore people to check out the story yesterday for the Facebook electing their 20 members on their Supreme Court for content moderation. We didn't get to dive into that enough yesterday, but if you want some stuff to digest over the weekend, that's a good one to really get into. Yeah, man, I think that's it for today. My name is Mr. Henry. Nathan, buddy, one of our best friends in the area. Love you for joining us this morning. David Shine Thompson, for all three of us, signing off this morning. See you on Monday.